Take you back to one of our top stories where President Cyril Ramaphosa has urged traditional leaders to become more involved in community development. He was speaking earlier today at the Congress of Traditional Leaders' 8th National Elective Conference in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg. For more on this, we're joined by Kgosi Nyalala Pilane, who will be giving us some reaction. Very good evening to you, Kgosi Nyalala. Of course, the elements of focus when President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke speak to a separate meeting that was underway in February, where traditional leaders really came to the forefront, raising all sorts of concerns. And one of those concerns resolves around royal disputes, the battles within royal disputes and the impact that will have on the community. What are your thoughts around that very problem?
Thank you very much, and thank you. Good evening to your viewers. I think what the president actually was saying is the disputes around the royal leadership has to be resolved properly, and normally it has to be done through the royal families. But unfortunately, we have seen a trend where some political officials do these things on their own without consulting with the proper royal families.
You make mention of trends. One of them was noted as the President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke, saying that 33 traditional leaders have been killed in the last few months, most of them in KwaZulu-Natal. That's really shocking numbers.
Yes, the issue of KwaZulu-Natal, it's really tragic. We have always been trying to say it has to be properly investigated. If possible, there should be even a special investigation or committee to look into what are really the problems. Why should all these killings happen, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal? And we hope the president understood our request to either create a commission or a special investigation in order to address this horrific killings in KZN.
Within this request for a commission and the president saying that it's really needed, what do you think should form some of the really important questions when it comes to getting some form of clarity? The numbers are really shocking, and they speak to a very different picture with the spate of targeting traditional leaders.
Well, that is why we are still trying to find exactly what are the causes of all these killings of so many traditional leaders. But basically, based in KwaZulu-Natal, and we wonder why KwaZulu-Natal, if indeed it's only because of the disputes, because it's not, the disputes are not only in KwaZulu-Natal. There are disputes in many other of our provinces, but we haven't seen such kind of spate of killing of traditional leaders.
And it also now raises questions around the tussle between leadership roles. The president saying that burning issues facing traditional leaders also include the numbers, 26 issues that he spoke to, and they included the removal from positions without much cause, which really perhaps could be an aspect to look at as you try and understand why there were so many killings within the royal houses.
Yeah, but my point is we have seen these removals are coming or are happening because of the involvement of people who are not necessarily supposed to be looking into whatever dispute is there, because firstly the royal families concerned are the ones who must look into those issues. But unfortunately, the trend has now turned that politicians sometimes take this arbitrary decision without involving the relevant people.
And issues will not be swept under the carpet was also something notable from the president, as he made mention of the issue around the transformation of land parcels being one that is also a major challenge within the communities.
Yes, one of our issues that we raised with the president is the issue of communal land or land in the rural communities, because these lands have been administered by the traditional leadership and their communities, but they are still registered or in the name of the minister as a trustee. And our position was, because this land has got nothing to do with the minister, and there's a position to bring them back. Why can't they be brought back to the communities and through their traditional leaders without having to wait for all these other claims? Because these are not necessarily the claimed land.
Many traditional councils are also not functional. Their offices are run down. Surely this must have some form of negative impact on the communities that they lead, because the leadership role is one that is very important.
Yes, one of the major issues that I think we always miss out is that the traditional leadership have not received enough support as administration to their communities, and that's why in those communities where they can't have any support or resource, the offices are run down, and they are in charge of communities, and they need to be supported by the fiscus. Unfortunately, this is not happening. So every community has to find its own way of sustaining themselves.
And why would you think that President Cyril Ramaphosa's intervention is crucial in this instance, as the traditional leaders have raised all sorts of challenges that need urgent attention?
Well, we regard traditional authorities as part of governance within the rural communities. Therefore, if it's part of governance, it's obviously performing functions that is governance related, and it has to be supported so accordingly.
With the lack of support that you make mention of, how does this now perhaps go down and infiltrate into the very communities that look up to traditional leaders for leadership and guidance and wisdom?
Well, previously in the previous regime, the apartheid regime, traditional communities had the right to charge some taxes and all other payments that were somehow sustaining the institution. But unfortunately, in the new dispensation, people were discouraged to pay that, and with the understanding that the government will now support this institution. And unfortunately, that did not take place. That did not happen.
Mm-hmm. Have you set any time frames at all for some of the really important revelations that came out of these talks with the president, like setting up that commission, which will be crucial to trying to get some answers as to the trend or the spate of killings of traditional leaders?
Well, as you know, when you talk to government, there will always be all these long processes, and we have previously agreed on time frames which the government did not fulfill, and we are still trying to find a way of ensuring that they eventually come up with that kind of intervention and assistance.
As perhaps we look at the role of traditional leaders, as their importance within communities, and also understanding that the impact of these disputes may reveal some rather sensitive and personal issues within the royal household. You know, what do you think would be the greater impact of interventions such as these that have now resulted in traditional leaders raising issues, and now some form of accountability will take place?
Well, if there are anything that needs to be resolved by an outside entity like government or whatever committee, that can be allowed. But our view is, before it can even be referred to other structures, it has to be resolved first internally by the royal family, because that's where the authority lies.
Very well. Let's leave it there for now. Thank you for your time. Kgosi Nyalala Pilane speaking now to some of the issues that traditional leaders raised as ontralesa, of course, had the, President Cyril Ramaphosa was on the podium speaking to some of the big challenges that were raised by traditional leaders.